Hine ma tovu manayim, shevet achim gam yachad. Hine ma tovu manayim, shevet achim gam yachad. Hine ma tov, shevet achim gam yachad. Hine ma tov, shevet achim gam yachad. Hine ma tovu manayim, shevet achim gam yachad. Hine ma tovu manayim, shevet achim gam yachad. We begin with the call to responsibility, the prayer which is on the inside of the handout, the bar mitzvah of Alex Mercer. This Shabbat, we celebrate a special moment in the life of our community. We come here from different places, often from different backgrounds, yet we share a common goal: to witness and welcome the sacred rite of passage in the life of one of our young people. A bar mitzvah is the culmination of years of hope and months of preparation, yet it is a starting point as well. It is the beginning of mature commitment, the beginning of full Jewish responsibility, a hint of the taste of adulthood. As a community and as a congregation, we acknowledge your accomplishment, Alex, as we continue reading the rest of this prayer now together to you. We welcome you now, on the verge of adulthood, into the congregation of Israel. You are today teacher of Torah, leader of prayer. You hold within your hands the future of Jewish life. May the promise and potential we see in you come to fruition. May you continue to grow in knowledge of Torah and the life of the Jewish people with your ongoing study. May you have a special place in your heart for your community, for Jews and Jewish needs in our land and in every land. And may we work together towards our ultimate goal, to take our ancient teachings and make them part of our lives as we strive to make this world a better place. We look now to you. Take your place in our midst as we today begin the creation of tomorrow. May you go and grow from strength to strength, and may the Holy One of blessings send success and fulfillment in all your efforts. We give thanks to you, eternal our God, ruling Spirit of the universe, for giving us life, for sustaining us, and for enabling us to reach this day of joy. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu, melech haolam, שהחיינו וקיימנו והגיענו לזמן הזה. Amen. Alex, the talit that you receive now from the hands of your parents represents the heritage that comes to rest upon your shoulders on this occasion. Asher Kiddushanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu. Amen. Shabbat Shalom. Welcome to the Shabbat afternoon service, the Mitzvah service followed by Amidah of the Hebrew congregation of St. Thomas. I'm Rabbi Michael Feshbach. I'm delighted that you are here with us, and I hope I remember to give you more of an extended thank you for why this is so important to us towards the end of the service tonight. The Hebrew congregation is a very special place. You are now in the oldest synagogue building in continuous use under the U.S. flag, the second oldest such building in the Western Hemisphere, and one of 5 synagogues in the world with sand on the floor. After the hurricanes, I've added the words intentionally. The story of the sand on the floor is obviously the most frequently asked question about our congregation. And here, we have to talk a little bit about history just to understand why it is there. It's not there as a reminder of God's promise to Abraham that we would be as numerous as the stars of the sky or the sands on the shores of the sea, although that's nice. It's not there to remember our wanderings in the desert, although that's nice. It's not there as an attractive thing for young kids to play with, although that is certainly true. The history has to do with the year 1492, when Spain kicked out the Jews, same year that Columbus sailed. In fact, it was the same day that the Edict of Expulsion against the Jews of Spain went into effect that Columbus left. That is probably not a coincidence. There's some speculation that Columbus himself might have been a hidden Jew. I'm not convinced, but for sure there were hidden Jews who sailed with him. But what the Crown said to the Jewish community was, you can leave penniless, or you can convert to Catholicism and keep everything you have. Some of those Jewish families had been there for 1,000 years. And so many, in fact, chose to use a strategy that had worked before. They converted on the surface and practiced Judaism in secret. But what Monty Python said as a joke was literally true. Nobody expects the Spanish Inquisition. Nobody expected the Crown to actually enforce it. But they did, and they made, if you got caught, they made practicing Judaism a capital crime. You would be put to death. And so the Jews who were doing this, converting on the surface but practicing Judaism in secret, so the legend goes, put sand on the floor to muffle the sounds of their footsteps as they came together in prayer. At least that is the story that was told 300 years later by their descendants who founded 5 synagogues, 4 in the Caribbean and 1 in Europe, with sand on the floor. So that is the beginning of the story of this synagogue. There are other parts I will tell you throughout the service, but for now, for our Shabbat afternoon service, we continue on page 338. We continue with Ashrei. And although I asked you to join me, those who know Ashrei know this is a call on response, so please do the indented sections out loud as I will do the opening sections. Ashrei yoshvei vetecha, od yehalalucha selah, Ashrei ha'am shekacha lo, Ashrei ha'am she'adonai Elohav, Tila leDavid, aramimcha Elohai hamelech, v'avarcha shimcha leolam va'ed, b'chol yom avarcheka, v'halala shimcha leolam va'ed, gadol Adonai u'muhulal me'od, v'ligdulato ein cheker, dor ledor yishabach ma'asecha, u'gvuratecha yagidu, hadar kavod hodecha, v'divrei niflotecha asicha, ve'ezuz noratecha yomeru, u'glulatcha asaprena, zecherav tuvcha yabiu, ve'tzitkatcha yiranenu, hanun v'rachum Adonai, erek apayim ugdal chased, tov Adonai lakol, v'rachamav al kol ma'asav, yoducha Adonai kol ma'asecha, v'chasidecha yivarchucha, kevod malchutcha yomeru, וגבורתך ידברו, להודיע לבני האדם גבורותיו, וכבוד הדר מלכותו, מלכותך מלכות כל עולמים, וממשלתך בכל דור ודור, סומך אדוני לכל הנופלים, וזוקף לכל הכפופים, עיני כל אליך יסברו, ואתה נותן להם את אוכלם בעתו, פותח את ידיך, ומשביע לכל חי רצון, צדיק אדוני בכל דרכיו, וחסיד בכל מעשיו, קרוב אדוני לכל קורב, לכל אשר יקראוהו באמת, רצון יראיו יעשה, ואת שבתם ישמע ויושיעם, שומר אדוני את כל אוהביו, ואת כל רשעים ישמיד, תהילת אדוני ידבר פי, ויברך כל בשר שם קודשו לעולם ועד, ואנחנו נברך יה, מעתה ועד עולם, hallelujah. We continue with Chetzi Kaddish, page 342. יתגדל ויתקדש שמי רבה, יעמד יברח חירותי וימליך מלכותי, בחייכון וביומכון ובחיי כל בית ישראל, בגלה בגלה ובזמן קריב ואמרו, יהי שמי רבה מבורך, לעולם לעולמי עולמיה, יתברך, יתברך וישתבח, ויתפאר ויתרומם ויתנשא, ויתהדר ויתעלה ויתהלל, שמי דקודשה, לעילה מן כל ברכתה ושירתה, תושבחתה ונחמתה, דמירן בעלמה, ואמרו. We have reached the next major section of the Jewish worship service called the Amidah, the Tifilah. Even though it is called the Amidah, the standing prayer, at the end of the first several sections, Alex will say you may be seated, and then the family readers will come up, and the rest of you may, if you choose, be seated through the section that the family readers are leading. If you're not familiar with this prayer book, the Siddur, Mishkan Tefillah, the Siddur of the North American Reform Movement, most prayers are laid out, Ashrei was not, but most prayers are laid out in a two-page spread, where the traditional Hebrew is on the top of the even-numbered page with a fairly faithful translation, and then on the odd-numbered page is the other side, the Sitra Atra, where there are sort of New Age, funky reinterpretations of the traditional Hebrew. Several of the family readers will be leading from the other side of the page, although I've asked you to join us together in all of the service. When the family readers are leading, let them lead the English here. But we join together, of course, in the opening Hebrew. Alex will lead us, page 344. We rise, we face the ark, which is facing the Ritz, which is facing St. John, which is ultimately facing Jerusalem. Page 344.
Adonai sifativta ufi yagi tihilateha. Adonai, open up my lips, that my mouth may declare your praise. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu, Elohei Avotenu v'Imotenu, Elohei Avraham, Elohei Yitzchak, Elohei Yaakov, Elohei Sarah, Elohei Rivka, Elohei Rahel, Elohei Leah. Ha'el Hagadol Hagibor v'Hanorah El Elyon, Gomel Hasadim Tovim v'Konei Hakol v'Zoher Hasdei Avot v'Imohot umevi Goel Livnei Vanehem Leman Shemo Ba'ahava Mele Ozer Umoshia Umagen Baruch atah Adonai Magen Avraham v'Ezrat Sarah. Oh, hold on. I need to Sorry.
Mechaye hakol ata.
It's right here.
Hoshia. It's right here. Mashiv
Harua,
harua.
umerid hagashem. Unhaike
Mehalkel
hayim behesed. Mehaye hakol barahamim rabim. Someh noflim. Berofe holim. Umatir asurim. Kayem emunato. Lishene afar. Miha moha bal givarot. Umidomela. Melech memit haye umatmi'a. Yeshu. Vene eman atad lehahayot hakol. Barahata Adonai mehaye hakol.
Page 350. Nikadesh et shimcha ba'olam. Keshem shemakdishim oto bishmei marom. Kakatuv al yad neviecha. Vekaraza el zeh ve'amar. Kadosh, kadosh, kadosh. Adonai Tzevaot, Meloch ol haaretz, Kevodom. Adir, adirenu Adonai, Adonenu ma'adir shimcha bechol haaretz, Baruch kevod Adonai mimkomo. Echad hu Eloheinu, Hu Avinu, Hu Malkeinu, Hu Moshienu, Vehu Yashmienu, Barachamav Le'enei Kol Chai. Ani Adonai Elohechem, Yimloch Adonai Leolam, Elohai Zion, Ledor Vador. Hallelujah. Ledor vador. Ledor vador. Ledor vador nagid God lecha. Ledor vador. Ledor vador. Ledor vador nagid God lecha. Ula netzach netzachim kedushatecha nakdish. Kedushatecha nakdish. V'shivchacha Eloheinu. Mihi pinu lo yamush, leolam leolam va'ed, Baruch atah Adonai, ha'el hakadosh.
You may be seated. Okay.
We continue towards the bottom of page 353.
For the good in us, which calls us to a better life, we give thanks. For the strength to improve the world with our hearts and hands, we give praise. For the peace in us, which leads us to work for peace, we are grateful. For the gift of Shabbat, which renews us for life, we offer blessing. Baruch atah Adonai, Mekadesh HaShabbat.
Bottom of page 355.
On this holy Shabbat, may we draw nearer to life, to peace, and to joy. May we find true rest, holiness in our deeds, worth in our study of Torah. Let us feed on the love of goodness. Let us drink from the love of goodness, restrain our thirst for excess, and cleanse our hearts to serve life well. On this holy Shabbat, may we draw nearer in life, in peace, and in joy. Baruch atah Adonai, shiocha levacha b'yirad navod.
The bottom of page 357.
When we
Behold your heavens, the work of your fingers, the moon and stars that you set in place. What are we humans that you are mindful of us? We mortals that you take note of us. You made us little less than divine, adorned us with glory and majesty. You gave us dominion over your handiwork, laying the world at our feet. Adonai our God, how majestic is your name throughout the earth. Baruch atah Adonai, hatov shimcha u'cha na'eh.
We continue in personal prayer. The bottom of page 360. Ose shalom bimromav, uyase shalom aleinu, ve'al kol Yisrael, ve'imru imru amen. Yase shalom, shalom aleinu, ve'al kol Yisrael, yase shalom, shalom aleinu, ve'al kol Yisrael. The Saturday afternoon, the Mincha service goes more quickly than a morning service does because we do not have in it the Shema and its blessings, but we do have, after everything else is done, Havdalah, which leads us into the week. So it is one section of the liturgy switched for another. But we have now reached the next section of the service, the Torah service. And before we continue, I want to share with you something about the history of two of our scrolls. As we open the Ark in a few moments, the scrolls on the far right, ultimately the one which Josh will be carrying and Alex will be chanting from, those two scrolls both come from the 1600s. They have silver instead of wood as the eitzim, and so are a bit heavier than you would think they would be. And also those two scrolls were saved from the fire that was in the synagogue building that existed on this location, at this location in 1831. If you are interested in more of a description of that fire, you could read the historical novel about St. Thomas, which is about probably the most famous family ever to be a member of this synagogue. The novel is called Marriage of Opposites. It is by Alice Hoffman, and the book is about the Pissarro family, Camille Pissarro, the founder of French Impressionism, born on St. Thomas, began painting and drawing on St. Thomas, left here when he was a teenager. But in that book is a description of how the men at the time ran into the burning congregation, saved its then two Torah scrolls, and also that eternal light that you see. Those two acts, the Torah scrolls and the eternal light, were then brought back in when the synagogue was dedicated, much as you see it now in 1833. The Ark is from 1833. Those two scrolls and the eternal lights. This Torah reading table and the candle lighting table from 1833. The pews, the benches on which you are sitting are from 1833. The pads that you are sitting on have been replaced. And the sand on the floor is actually freshwater sand and is replaced every few years. But generally, sometimes as you look at old pictures of the building, you will see not the bright white plaster covering, but the bricks underneath it. There are times when, in the year 2000, I believe we renovated and completed a remake, and the synagogue then appears brighter and lighter, but it is basically unchanged in its structure and form and its furniture from 1833. I will tell you the story of the scroll which Alex will be carrying in just a moment. At this time, I ask our next set of Ark door openers to please assemble by the Ark doors, and we ask all those members of Alex's immediate family who are participating in the passing of the Torah from generation to generation to assemble in their positions in front of the ark. We ask the twins to be ready for their role, and Josh, if you'll step up to be ready to carry the larger scroll. We continue with Seder Kriyat Torah, and Julie, if you'll please come up to here. Thank you. We continue with Seder Kriyat Torah, the service for the reading of Torah, page 362. Ein kamocha v'Elohim Adonai, ve'ein kema'asecha, malchutecha malchut kol olamim, umemshaltecha bechol dor v'ador. Adonai melech, Adonai malach, Adonai imloch, leolam va'ed, Adonai oz le'amo yitein, Adonai yivarech et amo v'shalom. Please rise. Av harachamim, Hetiva virtzonecha et Zion. Tivne chomot Yerushalayim. Tivne chomot Yerushalayim. Ki vecha levad batachnu, Melech el ram v'nisa, Adon olamim. Alex, the scroll which you are going to carry in a moment is our lightest scroll other than those, but it carries the heaviest tale. In 1939, when Hitler invaded Czechoslovakia, he gave orders to his generals to burn the synagogues and eventually burn the Jews, but to save the silver and save the scrolls. And the Nazis, you may not know this, but the Nazis were careful record keepers. You can still see the number inscribed on the top of this scroll to this very day. They were going to make a museum to the extinct race after they had killed all the Jews in the world. Fortunately, they lost the war. And after the war, the Allies found this treasure trove of scrolls in Czechoslovakia. They didn't know what to do with them. There were no Jews left in Czechoslovakia. So they packaged them up and sent them to London, where they were accepted by a synagogue there, which formed the Westminster Synagogue Holocaust Memorial Scroll Trust. And then hundreds of them were sent throughout the Jewish, your synagogue in New Jersey may have one. My previous one in Maryland did. Hundreds of these scrolls sent out on permanent loan to congregations throughout the Jewish world. Should there ever be such a time, this scroll came from Budin, Czechoslovakia. If there was ever to be another Jewish community in Budin, we would get, I don't know, an Instagram, a tweet, saying, we want our scroll back. And we laugh at the idea that there would be Jews in Czechoslovakia again, but just a few years ago in 2019, at a convention, do you remember conventions? When people got together without masks? At a convention, a biennial convention of the Reform movement in Chicago, in December of 2019, I witnessed a Hillel in New Jersey, as it happens, that had traveled to Chicago to decommission its scroll, and there in front of 5,000 Reformed Jews, we said prayers over this scroll and sent it on its way back to a new Jewish community in Czechoslovakia. So when you step on that sand, which is symbolic of the greatest moment of persecution of Jews in all of Sephardic Jewish history, and you carry this scroll in your arms, which is symbolic of the greatest moment of persecution of Ashkenazi Jews, indeed the worst moment in all of Jewish history altogether, and you become a bar mitzvah, you are saying the people who tried to do this to us are no longer here. And the people who tried to do this to us, other than a few crazies in Charlottesville, are no longer here. But we are stepping into the Jewish future. This is the Torah. And the story our people tells 3,500 years ago, it entered our religious life and has remained the center of our spiritual consciousness ever since. In the metaphor of transmission, we read in Pirkei Avot, Moses received the Torah at Sinai and passed it on to Joshua, and Joshua to the elders, and the elders to the prophets, and the prophets to the men and women of the great assembly, and on down through all the generations of psalmists and sages and poets and philosophers who have taken its teaching and brought its message to their own time, until at last it comes to our time, to the arms of those who become grandparents, who pass it on to their children, who become parents in turn, until at last it comes to the arms of the present generation, until at last it comes, carefully, to Alex, and also, in this case, to Josh. We continue, page 366. Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad, Echad Eloheinu, Gadol Adonenu, Kadosh Shemo, Gadlu Adonai iti, Unoromama Shemo Yachdav. Circle around, then come back. Lecha Adonai Hagidula v'Hagivura, and then come back. V'Hanetzach v'Hachod, Ki chol v'shamayim uvaretz, Ki chol v'shamayim uvaretz. Lecha Adonai Hamam. Go over there. They didn't get it. Lecha Adonai Hamam Lacha. No, you guys can come back. Hamid Nahase Lecho Lerosh Romemu Romemu Adonai Eloheinu Romemu Romemu Adonai Eloheinu V'hishtachavu V'hishtachavu L'Hadom Raglav Kadoshu Romemu Romemu Adonai Eloheinu V'hishtachavu V'hishtachavu Ki Kadoshu Ki Kadosh Adonai Eloheinu. Please be seated. This is your Torah. This is your speech about the Torah.
Okay, yeah. Shabbat Shalom. My Torah portion is Yitro, and it is from the book of Exodus, chapter 18, verses 1 through 20. I will be chanting verses 1 through 8. My parsha begins with the Israelites having just left Egypt after escaping from the Pharaoh. The people are telling Moses all their different problems and asking him to solve them. Moses is overwhelmed with all the problems of the people and overworking himself to the point that he cannot spend time with his family. Yitro is the father-in-law of Moses. Fun fact, the name Yitro is actually Jethro in English. Yitro wants to help and advise Moses instead of lecturing him. He decides not to lecture Moses because he thought it would be ineffective. Yitro didn't want to be ignored, so he sat Moses down and gave him a suggestion instead. Yitro suggested that Moses delegate decisions on laws to a system of judges to help the Israelites. And Moses would train them to make these decisions fairly, which allowed him to spend more time with his family. I think this shows that Yitro wants people to think about a solution instead of just complaining about it. After Moses has taken and applied his father-in-law's advice, God summons Moses up to Mount Sinai. God bestows the 10 Commandments to the Israelites. This is a covenant that they need to follow. A covenant is an agreement, like a contract. The 10 Commandments are so important because they are a set of laws that should not be broken. These commandments are, you shall have no other God besides Adonai, you shall not worship idols, you shall not take God's name in vain, remember Shabbat to keep it holy, honor thy father and mother, you shall not murder, you shall not commit adultery, you shall not steal, you shall not lie, you shall not covet. I would like to tell you how this portion is relevant to me. It is relevant to me because when I have a problem or need advice, my family is always there to help me, just as Yitro gave advice to Moses, even though Moses was already guided by God. So I would like to speak about the 10 Commandments and how it relates to us today. The 10 Commandments were given to us because we needed guidance and laws. Laws help people to learn how to live, or else there would be chaos. Laws also reassure you and show you that you are cared for by others. America needs to come up with a system of laws ourselves. In the U.S. Constitution, Article 3 focuses on starting a Supreme Court and establishing a judicial system similar to what Yitro suggested. Last week was the anniversary of the Capitol uprising, which shows us even now we still need and require laws. There is a Jewish proverb that says, "Do not be wise in words, be wise in deeds." In other words, you can't just say something. You have to prove it through what you do in life. This is because actions speak louder than words. These are words that we should live by. I want to thank the people who guided me in life. Thank you to my mom and dad, who are always there for me and were really helpful in preparing for today, and in the spirit of my Divrei Torah, definitely set some rules for me to follow. I also want to thank Josh and Samantha, who I can always count on to be there to help me bend those rules a bit. At home, many people helped me prepare to learn this service today, especially Barry, Janet, Rena, and Canner Epstein. I also want to thank the rabbi for helping me lead this service. Finally, I want to thank my family and friends who traveled so far to be here and celebrate with me today. Okay.
Nicely done, Yasher Koach. I have a couple of quick comments on your Dvar Torah, Alex. That was excellent. For those who do want to follow along, we have something called the Plout Torah Commentary Revised Edition, which is not the prayer book, but a slightly larger blue book out there. The portion he will be chanting is from page 471, if you would like to. Alex, thank you for picking that up. Because somebody implied to you at some point that it was a law to keep things neat, right? So, as the son of an attorney, am I correct? At least one? So that was a very good defensive law. Alex, you should know, if you don't already, you might already, that in some traditions they sort of contrast law, and they say law is for the rules, for when you need rules, but really people should behave based in a natural way, based on love. And they contrast law and love, but in Jewish tradition, law is an expression of love. God gives us the Torah out of a sense of love for us. God so loved us that God gives us the Torah. That is the Jewish understanding. So the next time your parents tell you to clean up your room, remember that their law is an expression of love. They want you to internalize it, just as you bent down to pick up that piece of paper now, because it was sort of out of order and out of place, to internalize a sense of right and wrong. The one other thing I want to say very quickly. You correctly translated the Ten Commandments, but you will see public transportation on the island called safaris. Have you seen them driving around the big, it's like an open air bus? And a lot of them will have on the back of them a translation of the Ten Commandments, only they're wrong. They didn't say, "Thou shalt not murder." They said, "Thou shalt not kill." That would have been a different verb in Hebrew. That's a different thing. It has different implications, and their translation is wrong. So when you see people who hold up the sign and it says "do not kill" as one of the Ten Commandments, I'm sure you'll go into very polite dialogue with them about they don't quite understand the Hebrew. Well, you can leave them alone. But you'll know that what it says is "do not murder." The question about killing, when it's justified, is it ever justified, is a question for another time. And I once met at a bar mitzvah, somebody said, "Oh, can my uncle do this reading?" And his uncle came forward. His uncle was Michael Walzer, who had written a book called Just and Unjust Wars. When is a war justified? When is a war not justified? So these questions that you talk about in your Dvar Torah for your bar mitzvah, these are real-life questions about how we live our lives. So thank you for doing an excellent, really an outstanding job with the Dvar Torah. Yamdu l'aliyah rishona, Yamod Shaul ben Yisrael. For the honor of the first Aliyah, Saul Mercer, Sarah Mercer, and Helena Turkle.
Pretty sure 2 other papers fell down.
What?
I'm pretty sure 2 other papers fell down.
Oh, okay, we'll get them later. Okay, it's down here because they're wearing a talit. Show them where the first word is, okay? But show them the first word and then we'll close the Torah, okay? Sorry. Come on up. Show your grandfather. He's wearing the talit. Show him the first word. Okay, now close it and step back.
Should I leave this?
Oh,
Cl-
good, it's in
Here you go.
big print.
All right, come on over. There's Baruch.
Baruch Hu es Adonai HaBaruch.
Baruch Adonai Hambarach Leolam Va'ed.
Baruch Adonai HaBaruch Le'olam Va'ed. Baruch Atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam. Asher bo rabonu mikol ornim. V'nosan lonu es Toraso. Baruch Atah Adonai Nosein HaTorah.
Do you want me to show you? Where's the Hebrew? It's right here. Hold on. Right here.
All right, let me have it. Thanks. Amen. Go ahead.
Vayishma.
Say amen.
Oh, Amen. Vayishma Yitro Kohen Midyan Hoten Moshe et Kol Asher Asa Elohim LeMoshe UV'Yisrael Amo Ki Hamotzi Adonai et Yisrael Mimitzrayim Vayika Yitro Hoten Moshe et Sipora Eshet Moshe Ahar Shiloheha Va'et Shnei Baneha Asher Shem Ha'ehad Gershom Ki Amar Ger Ha'inzi Be'eretz Nochriah.
Okay, leave it there. It may move, but leave it there anyway.
Okay.
Baruch Atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam. Asher nosan lonu Torah emes. Baruch Olam noten sochenu. Baruch Atah Adonai Nosein HaTorah.
Amen. Now, technically, you should stay up here, but because of the
I know.
size of our bima, if you'll go back down.
It's okay. All right, we're going down this road.
Ya'amdu l'aliyah hashniya Yamod Ephraim Tzvi ben Shaul Sarah Dvora Tamod Miriam Shoshana bat Ephraim v'Chava lichvod haTorah. Sorry. Ya'amod Yehuda Aharon ben Ephraim Tzvi uMiriam Shoshana Tamod Shena Bela bat Ephraim Tzvi uMiriam Shoshana lichvod haTorah. For the honor of the second Aliyah, Eric Mercer, Marcy Mercer, Josh Mercer, and Samantha Mercer. Okay, so show your dad and your brother the first word.
Right there.
Okay, show it to him. Here, let them kiss it too if you want. Take the end of your talit.
Yeah,
Never mind. That's okay. All right. Go ahead. Sorry. Ready? Okay.
Baruch et Adonai HaBaruch.
Baruch Adonai Hambarach Leolam Va'ed.
Baruch Adonai HaBaruch Le'olam Va'ed. Baruch Atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam. אשר בחר בנו מכל העמים, ונתן לנו את תורתו, ברוך אתה אדוני, נותן התורה.
Hashem.
Okay.
Amen. Say amen.
Amen. V'shem ha'ehad Eliezer Kilohei Avi Be'ezri Vayatzileni Mehere Paro Vayavo Yitro Hoten Moshe Ubenav Ve'ishto El Moshe El Hamibar Asher Hu Hanoshem Har Elohim. Oh wait, do I keep? Oh, Vayomer El Moshe Ani Hoten Ha Yitro Ba'eleha Ve'ishteha Uvshnei Baneha Ima. I didn't know if I was supposed to stop there.
It rolled a little, but we'll find out.
Eloheinu melech haolam, asher natan lanu Torah emet, v'chayei olam natan b'tochenu, baruch atah Adonai, noten haTorah.
Amen. Yishkoach. Let's go back down. It has been my custom for the final aliyah, when a young person is called to the Torah, to ask anyone in the congregation under the age of 18 who has not been up here already, Samantha, to please come up, stand behind Alex during his final aliyah. But before you come up, I want to give you a warning. I'm going to turn to you after the closing blessing after his aliyah and ask if you have any questions about the Torah, about the scroll, about the synagogue, about anything that's even remotely relevant. And if you do, we'll talk about that. And if you don't, there will be this awkward, uncomfortable silence as we just stare at each other. So anyone under the age of 18, other than Samantha, who was up here earlier, if you'll please come up and stand behind Alex during his aliyah. And think of some questions if you can. I think it's Vayitze.
It is Vayitze.
But where did it go?
It's right there.
You see it?
Yeah, I see it. I think.
Okay. All right. Let's close it for now.
Okay.
Ya'amod, 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 habachor habar mitzvah. Adin Chaim ben Ephraim Tzvi uMiriam Shoshana lichvod haTorah. For the honor of the third aliyah, the bar mitzvah, Alexander Harrison Mercer. Baruch
Adonai Hamvorah.
Baruch Adonai Hamvarach leolam va'ed.
Baruch Adonai Hamvorach leolam va'ed. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher bahar banu mikol ha'amim, v'natan lanu et Torato. Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah.
Amen. And don't say amen, just do Vayitze.
Vayitze Moshe ligrat hotno, vayishtehu, vayashaklo, vayishalu, ishtarehu, leshalom, vayavo'u ha'ohla, vayisaper Moshe lehotno, et kol asher asa Adonai lefaro umitzrayim al odot Yisrael et kol hatlaha asher mitzatan bedere
Vatzileim
vayatzileim
Adonai. Excellent. Blessing afterwards, blessing afterwards. Baruch
Adonai
Eloheinu
Eloheinu
melech haolam.
Asher natan lanu Torat emet v'hayei olam nata betohenu. Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah.
Amen. Yishkoach. Nicely done. So, does anybody have any questions about the Torah? Thank God, yes.
What's your oldest Torah?
What's our oldest Torah? I don't know between this one and the one on the... That's a good question. And between these two on the far right, I do not know. But they're both from the 1600s, and that's really old. The oldest thing in the building is not me. It's actually this menorah there. Now, that's not a Hanukkah menorah. That is a 7-branch menorah, which is the oldest symbol of Judaism. But we were told that that's from the year 1100. Now, I was also told when I moved here, you know Michael, the custodian who was helping earlier and is still out there? When I moved here, he said, we don't have the receipt. So we're not sure. But if it's from 1100 or 1250, that's still the oldest thing in the building. Yes?
How old is the chandelier?
The chandeliers is an excellent question. They are almost as old as the building themselves, but they are, so 1833, 1834, 1835, something like that. These are baccarat crystal. And you know, when I said this synagogue was founded by descendants of Jews from Spain, that's a particular kind of Jews called Sephardic Jews. And it's a Sephardic custom during a bar mitzvah. It would have been right now, after he finished, to ululate. What is ululating? It means that in an Orthodox Sephardic synagogue, men and women sat separately, and the only way the women participated is after the boy was finished, or at an upcoming wedding blessing, they would go, "Ulululu," and they would throw candy. Now, that's a Sephardic custom, but even though this is a Sephardic synagogue, we are not throwing things in here with irreplaceable baccarat French crystal, right? So if you want to do this at the party, you can throw things at him later, but symbols of sweetness, we hope, right? But for now, not in here, and the reason is the chandeliers, is the crystal. Yes?
Why was this location chosen?
Probably because it was up a hill away from flooding, and in fact, that we were able to build a fairly... We've taken damage during hurricanes, but no... And any fires that have broken out in the area, it's been built in a very sturdy way. Why was St. Thomas chosen? That's a different story that has to do with the American Revolution, and that one I don't have time for. How many of you guys know Hebrew? All right, so you're learning Hebrew, right? So you know that these are the big, bold letters are all consonants, right? So the dots and squiggles underneath, those are the vowels, right? So come take a look at the Torah. Do you see any dots and squiggles?
No.
Good, because otherwise we would have had to call an ophthalmologist, right? So the question is, if this is all consonants, and Alex not only read this but chanted it, how on earth could he have read it? So please read this. This would be, and the next word is easy. This would be easy. By the way, there are things under the sand, so please put your shoes on when you go back down, right? This would be easy if you know the words. And in an Israeli newspaper, this could be new or it could be no. So in an Israeli newspaper, you might have one vowel for that one word. That is how Israelis learn to read. But it is not how Americans learn to read. So what Alex did here was quite challenging and quite difficult. I'm going to ask you to go back down to your seats as quietly as possible because we move to a serious moment in the service, and please put shoes on. As I cover the scroll, our tradition tells us through the merit of our ancestors and through the merit of the study of Torah, we are able to invoke God's blessing for the most deeply heartfelt yearning and prayers in our life. And when somebody in our life is ill, they are always on our mind. And so in a moment, I will give you a chance to share any names. And if we have anyone on Zoom, how many? So they can unmute and share a name in a moment. Mishaberach Avotenu Avraham Yitzchak v'Yaakov v'Yemotenu Sarah Rivka Rachel v'Leah v'Yivarech v'Yirapeh et hacholim ha'ela. O God, who blessed our ancestors, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, Sarah, Rebekah, Rachel, and Leah, send your blessing and your healing, your comfort and your hope to the following of our friends: Paul Fiersig, Betsy Kingery.
Dennis Resnick.
Any names in the prayer for healing?
Dennis Resnick.
Anyone on Zoom?
Dennis Resnick.
Yeah, Angelson's here.
Baruch atah, that I think was just check-in, not a,
Dennis Resnick.
thank you. Baruch atah Adonai, Rofeh Cholim. We praise you, O God, who helps us heal, who brings us comfort. At this time, Alex, we ask your parents to come forward for their remarks to you. I'd like you to stand over here, face them. Their job is to be interesting. As I said to you the other day, your job is to look interested. You have to succeed whether they do or not.
Speak into the microphone, please. Okay. Alex, Mom and I are so proud of you today. Watching you lead the service reminded me just how much you're growing and on your way from being our baby, which in some respects you will always be, to becoming a man. This is an important step in that journey, and we are very proud of you. This is a touch point that allows us to reflect. You are kind, considerate, and quietly confident, except when you're trying to one-up your brother, but we'll give you a pass on that one. Keep those qualities. Alex, today is about family, friends, and community. It is about our collective dreams and hopes. It is about traditions and values, and the passing of those traditions and values down through the ages. You were named after two of your great-grandmothers, and we see their strengths in you. Today is about your Jewish heritage. It's about your grandparents and their grandparents before them. Today, in this beautiful temple in St. Thomas, you join them. It is your turn to be encircled by family and friends whom have all made the effort to be here with us today. Watch as you embrace your Jewish heritage with joy and comfort, knowing that you will strive to live by the values our faith teaches. We know you will have so many wonderful moments like this one in your life, and we can't wait to enjoy them with you. But throughout your life, you'll be thrown curveballs. Unexpected events happen. Remember, when facing life's challenges, sometimes you'll be successful and sometimes you won't. We want you to know that Mom and I will always be here for you through good and for bad. We also want you to know that your family and friends are here for you too. Alex, people enjoy being around you for many reasons. Your personality, your warmth, Samantha, because she's still plotting to steal your eyes. But above all, people like being around you because you're such a good person. We are so very proud of you, and we know that you will remember to continue to have respect for and pride in your heritage. Most of all, we know you will live a life with honor, integrity, and some laughter. May you learn from those that come before you and from the example from those around you today. We love you. Face me. So, that was very nice, everybody. It's almost over, right? What'd you say? No, I'm sorry, that was a trick question. It's just beginning. Alex, how long have I been losing? Yeah, that's what most people did. We're going to do the math, okay? If Abraham ever existed, ask your rabbi about that in 10th grade. Okay? If Abraham existed, it was around 1800 before the Common Era. Let's round that up to 2000. It's 2000 before the Common Era, and it's around 2000 of the Common Era now. 2000 plus 2000 is? 4,000? Thank God he can do math. 4,000 years there's been Jews in the world. So here's my real question for you. Your father spoke very beautifully about your grandparents and your great-grandparents. But what's going to happen to us in the next 40 years?
I would be doing that.
What'd you say?
I guess I would be doing that.
You got it. That's correct. It depends now on you. This is a beautiful tallit that rests on your shoulders. But listen, Alex, 4,000 years on your shoulders. No pressure. You have made us very proud today. Make us proud tomorrow, too. As we invoke.
As we look to your future, we invoke the most ancient words of blessing of our people's past. Yivarechecha Adonai v'yishmerecha. May God bless you and keep you. Ya'er Adonai panav elecha v'yichuneka. May God shine in you and through you. Yisa Adonai panav elecha v'yasem lecha shalom. May God give you the gift of shalom, of peace in the world into which you step now as a Jewish adolescent, of peace in all of your relationships, and most importantly, of peace in your own heart. And together let us say, Amen. Alex, we present to you the first of several gifts that you will be receiving today. This is a mezuzah, but it is a very special mezuzah. It is a mezuzah that is shaped like the entrance to this synagogue, so that wherever you go, you will always have a chance to remember this special place and this very special day. Yasher Koach. As we look, go ahead and put it down. Just don't forget it up here, along with your certificate. I just found the end of December Bar Mitzvah boys certificate. I just found up here. We're going to have to mail it to them in LA, so don't forget your certificate. So, as we prepare to return the Torah to the Ark, at this time we call forward our Torah holder and our Torah dresser. So I think you guys can go back down. You stay near here. Step back a little bit. And we ask our second set of Ark door openers, the twins, to please move forward to the Ark doors. As we lift the Sefer Torah, as I move the microphone out of the way so I don't hit it, as we lift the Sefer Torah, please rise. V'zot HaTorah asher sam Moshe lifnei v'nei Yisrael al pi Adonai b'yad Moshe al shlosha devarim al shlosha devarim al shlosha devarim ha'olam omed al HaTorah ve'al ha'avodah ve'al gemilut chasadim. Good job. Al HaTorah ve'al ha'avodah ve'al gemilut chasadim. We continue. You okay there? Yep. We continue on the top of page 374. Yahalalu et Shem Adonai ki niskav shemo levado hodo al eretz v'shamayim vayarem keren le'amo tehila lechol chasidav livnei Yisrael am kerovo. Hallelujah, hallelujah. The bottom of page 586, we move to the concluding section of our service, which will be followed by Havdalah, so don't leave quite yet. Aleinu, the bottom of 586. Aleinu l'shabeach ladon hakol, latet gedula leotzer breshit, Shelo asanu k'goyei ha'aratzot, velo samanu k'mishpachot ha'adama, shelo sam chelkenu kahem, v'gor aleinu k'chol hamonam, v'anachnu korim, u'mishtachavim u'modim, lifnei melech malchei hamlachim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Shehu Noteh Shamayim v'Yosed Haaretz, U'moshav Yikaro b'Shamayim u'mimal, U'shchinatu zo b'kovhei meromi, U'Eloheinu enod, Emet Malkeinu efesulato, Kakatuv b'Torato, v'yadata hayom, v'hashevota el levavecha, ki Adonai hu ha'Elohim, b'shamayim mimal, v'al ha'aretz, מתחת אין עוד, ונאמר, והיה אדוני למלך על כל הארץ, ביום ההוא יהיה אדוני אחד, ושמו echad. There are stars whose radiance is visible on this earth, though they have long since ceased to exist. There are people whose light and whose warmth continue to shine for us, though they are no longer among us. These stars which shine in the dark of the night, they light the way for humankind. We remember at this time one special family remembrance, somebody who the family would have loved to have been with us here, who is no longer with us, Fred Turkle. Are there any other names that anyone has, Kaddish, or for a special family remembrance on this occasion? Yes. Thanks. Anyone on Zoom, any name for Kaddish? The memories of all of our loved ones are with us. Our griefs and sympathies are mingled. As we turn now to Kaddish Yatom, the mourner's Kaddish, on page 598, and as is the custom in most Reform synagogues, we rise as a congregation as a whole for Kaddish Yatom, for the mourner's Kaddish prayer itself. 598. Yitkadal v'yitkadash shemei Rabbah, b'alma divrach cherutei v'yamlich malchutei, b'chayei chon u'v'yom echon u'v'chayei dechol Beit Yisrael, ba'agala u'v'zman kariv v'imru, amen. Yehei shmei Rabbah v'orach le'olam olmei almaya, yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitromam v'yitnaseh, v'yitadar v'yitaleh v'yitalal shmei dekudasha b'richu, le'ela min kol birchata v'shirata, tushbechata v'nechamata, ta'amiran be'alma v'imru, amen. Yehei shlama Rabbah min shemaya, v'chayim aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael, v'imru, amen. Oseh shalom b'mromav, hu ya'aseh shalom, aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael, ve'al kol yoshvei tevel, v'imru, amen. May the source of peace send peace to all who mourn, among us and wherever they may be, all those who are suffering the pain of loss everywhere, and together let us say, amen. I want to take a moment to thank all of you for being here. This island still needs you. I am not talking about COVID in this regard. You may be seated for a moment, but I'm going to ask you to stand again for Havdalah. It is still the case, COVID or not, we are still suffering, we are still recovering from the terrible sister storms, the twin hurricanes of 2017, Irma and Maria. Our island, our community here, our Jewish community, therefore needs your presence, your interest, your support. I am deeply grateful that you have come. I am grateful that you have come and are respectful of the protocols here as everybody is trying to figure out the right thing to do. Alex, this has been a very challenging time at which you came of age, as it were, at which you become a bar mitzvah, but it is something you will always remember. This is a 2 years you will tell your grandchildren and great-grandchildren about, but may there be memories of sweetness and success such as this mixed into the middle of this time for you. And thank you to the Mercers and all of you for being here. Havdalah is the transition from the sweetness of Shabbat to the workday and ordinary week. It is, the word for ordinary is chol. I guess in British terms that would be muggle, right? It would be sort of, that doesn't mean something bad, it doesn't mean something good, it just means ordinary. So we transition from Kodesh, from holiness, to chol, to the weekday world with Havdalah. I think that I'm going to meet you down there and be as carefully positioned as we can. So Samantha and Josh and Alex, if you can meet me by the Havdalah set. For those of you who love to follow the blessings, they are on page 612. One second. No. Let's move this away from the flowers because I do, uh-oh. We're going to imagine that there's juice. Is there juice over there? Just water, okay. We're going to imagine juice in here. How are we going to put out the candle? That's a very good question. Well, I don't want to say we're going to turn water into wine, but Josh, can you go get me a little bit of water and bring it over? We're going to imagine that it's wine, and we're going to say the blessing as if it's wine. Yeah, pour it in a cup and bring it over. So turn around to face out. Pour it in here. Thank you. Remember that the custom is that you would hold this, the flame should be as high as you would like your future partner's eyes to be. Yai lai 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 yai lai 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 yai lai 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 yai lai 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 lai. We can put it down for now. Yai lai 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 yai lai 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 yai lai 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 yai lai 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 yai lai lai. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam borei peri hagafen borei peri hagafen yai lai 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 yai lai 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 yai lai 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 yai lai 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 yai lai. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam borei min v'samim borei minei v'samim borei minei v'samim yai lai 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 yai lai 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 yai lai 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 yai lai lai. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam borei me'orei ha'esh borei me'orei ha'esh borei me'orei ha'esh yai lai 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 yai lai 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 yai lai 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 yai lai lai. Continue with the lai lais. Yai lai. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam hamavdil ben kodesh l'chol ben or l'choshech ben Yisrael la'amim. Baruch atah Adonai hamavdil ben kodesh l'chol. Lai 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 lai. Eliyahu hanavi, Eliyahu hatishbi, Eliyahu, Eliyahu, Eliyahu hagiladi, bimheira v'yamenu, yavo elenu, Imashiach ben David, Mashiach ben David, Shavua Tov, Shavua Tov, Shavua Tov, Shavua Tov. A good week, a week of peace. May gladness reign and joy increase. Shavua Tov, Mazel Tov. Yasher Koach, Siman Tov, and Mazel Tov, Mazel Tov, and Siman Tov, Siman Tov, and Mazel Tov, Mazel Tov, and Siman Tov, Siman Tov, and Mazel Tov, Mazel Tov, and Siman Tov. Yeheilanu, 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 Lechol Yisrael. I'm throwing candy at you. Yehei lanu, Lechol Yisrael. Thank you all for being here. Shavua Tov. May it be a good week, and may you have a wonderful, wonderful time.